blood through the pulmonary circulation is going to come back to the left ventricle only. So left ventricle is continuously put into a overload situation. So that is one important reason that initially the left atrial enlargement, left ventricular hypertrophy is the rule. Later on left atrial enlargement with the biventricular hypertrophy, then the right ventricular hypertrophy. So that's how the progression of the VSD basically goes on. So simply by looking at the ECG you can know in the history of the VSD, in the career of the VSD, this individual has gone to the position of the vice president, president or chairman, depending upon is it a normal ECG with biventricular hypertrophy or the right ventricular hypertrophy. Based on that you can be able to judge what was the natural course of the VSD. If you take a chest radiograph, if it is a very large shunt, then the RV and the LV and also the LA, all of them typically become enlarged. Pulmonary arteries also become enlarged, pulmonary vascularity also become increased unless there is an associated PS, pulmonary stenosis is what need to be remembered. And the moment the pulmonary vascular disease evolves, the pulmonary artery become enlarged and there is a pruning of the pulmonary vascular bed because of that plethora. And in rare cases, if the VSD is located in a subvascular location below the level of the aorta, we have seen there is a trabecular type, muscular type, membranous type, and it can be located just below the level of the aorta. In such scenarios, there can be an associated aortic cusp prolapse, associated defect associated with the high level VSD. And if it is associated, it can lead to the development of the aortic regurgitation. And also it will reduce the degree of the VSD shunt in that scenario is what need to be basically remembered. So the associated abnormalities with the VSD can be an associated PS. It can be an associated AR because of the aortic valvular prolapse is what has to be basically remembered. If you look at the electrocardiogram, there is a right axis deviation and the precordial lead voltage criteria which we discussed. They also, that is the Framingham criteria, any criteria if you apply, you also find left ventricular hypertrophy associated. So there is a reason, doctor, if a patient has got a right axis deviation along with the criteria satisfying the left ventricular hypertrophy, the combination of the two, then you will be judging that probably he has got a biventricular hypertrophy, which is a very important indicator of the presence of a severe form of the VSD, is what I want to underscore to all of you. Because in the VSD initially there is a normal ECG. Later on it is left atrial enlargement and the left ventricular hypertrophy with a left axis deviation kind of pattern. But a point of time will come where it will be a biventricular hypertrophy. How do you identify that biventricular hypertrophy? It is the typical right axis deviation along with the left ventricular hypertrophy pattern with tall QRS complexes within the V6 and V5 is highly indicative of the presence of the biventricular hypertrophy. If you do the echocardiography, you can demonstrate the overloaded chambers, that is the right ventricle, pulmonary artery, left atrium, left ventricle, everything, and also it can define what exactly is the anatomy, what subtype of VSD does it belong to. Doppler ultrasound also can be able to quantify the magnitude of the shunting. It can be able to make up the color Doppler. What is the gradient from LV to RV? What is the RV systolic pressure? And if sometimes, if the right ventricular systolic pressure is very high because of this left ventricle blood falling into it, and the pulmonary arterial pressures, if they are very high, this increased right ventricular pressures can cause some amount of functional tricuspid regurgitation. So there is a reason, is there any associated TR also, is it there? So all these things can be quantified by doing the Doppler ultrasound is what I want to underscore to all of you. If it is a color flow Doppler, it can delineate the shunt defect and also associated valvular regurgitation. Is there any role for the MRI and cardiac CT? There are the non-invasive methods once more to visualize the defect. MRI can also provide some quantitative shunt data, and the radionuclide flow studies also have a role in identifying what is the size of the left to right shunt. So that way, doctor, but more important is ECG and doing the 2D echo and the color Doppler. That would be sufficient in order to quantify and also typify what type of defect of the VSD is the individual having.